to talk through her being a foster parent. You're a foster parent to two lovely children.
Yes, very lovely.
One is 16 and the other one is a year?
My teenager is 18, actually.
Oh, wow.
Almost 19.
Okay.
And the other one is just turned 8 months old last week.
Wow. That's a little bit of a gap there, huh?
A big gap.
Yeah. Talk about totally different parenting styles on the kids, right?
But it's a nice gap because she is really good with him and he adores her. So she's real helpful. Yeah,
that always helps out when you got, especially being a single parent as you are.
Right.
So I thought it would be kind of interesting to hear your story of what kind of got you there. Obviously, we're not going to talk about the kids themselves, but I'd like to kind of understand your path to what brought you to the point to be a foster parent, because not a lot of people want to do that, right?
Right. Correct.
There's a huge shortage of that.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And so I think you're doing an outstanding thing, and you're doing a challenge that most people wouldn't want to accept. So, kind of what got you there?
Well, fertility issues, actually. Foster care wasn't initially even in my radar. Adoption, of course, I always kind of thought about that, but foster care never really popped into my mind. My mom and dad had a foster son for a while. It was before I was born, but he was a teenager. I don't think their experience was the greatest, but they happened to get pregnant when he was still there. So he ended up getting returned to his dad, but it still wasn't really in my radar initially.
So you never met the boy that they fostered?
When he grew up, he came back to visit a couple times.
Oh, okay. Okay.
He had, some intellectual issues, but, he came a couple times, and then we kind of just never really saw him again. So
that didn't. So I guess what you're getting at is that really isn't what inspired you to kind of become a foster parent.
No, not at all.
And then, so you mentioned your fertility issues.
Yes. And
so is that ultimately what going through all of that, and however, if you want to get into that, by all means, please do. But is that what kind of drove you to where you're at now then?
Yes. Yes. I always wanted to do a family like conventionally right.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to let down my parents. So I didn't want to get pregnant without being married and all that stuff. But when I was 20, I took a job as a 911 dispatcher, which I still do 23 years later. But it involves a lot of shift work. So you don't really meet people very well if you're on second shift. How are you going to meet somebody? 11:30 at night when you stop at a bar to have a beer. That's not really the kind of clientele I want to have as a husband.
It's probably not where you're going to meet the love of your life, right?
Right. And I had a bunch of relationships that just weren't really compatible, for one reason or another, whether it was somebody controlling or whatever. It's just, that's not me. I'm a very independent person. So a lot of my relationships didn't really make it past 2 or 3 years. And then when I was, I want to say 31 or 32, I moved into a house, met my neighbor, and probably about 2 years later, or a year or two later, we actually started dating.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So when I was 35, we got married. I thought living next to him, I was getting to know him pretty well. So lived next to each other a year or two, then we started dating for a year and a half, whatever it was, and then we got married. He had a son who was around 8, I think, at the time that we got married. We got along great. He was a great kid. I miss him. But so he was, I told him, obviously when you're 35, you meet a lot of people that already have kids and they're already 8, 10, 12 years old. So it's kind of, slim pickings as far as somebody that still wants a child at 35 years old. But he was, he's like, I would have another kid, so obviously that kind of helped the dating process because I was like, okay, this is somebody that actually might be...
We're compatible.
Yeah, exactly. So we got married in 2012. And things were going pretty well. And I kind of talked to him. I'm like, I just have a feeling, because I had some, girly issues. I just had a feeling that I was going to have issues with fertility. So every now and then I would discuss the potential of having to have fertility treatment, IVF, which is, and he's like, how much does that cost? And I'm like, well, the entire thing with the implanting of the egg and the drugs that you have to take, like $20,000 to $25,000. And he's like, why don't we just adopt a kid from China then? Just, random stuff like that. So I don't think his desire to have one was as much as mine, because he obviously already has one.
So do you think that was a lot to do with it for him? He's like, I've already got a child, so it's not a big deal if I do or don't.
I don't want to say it was a lot to do with it for him. Our issues, I don't want to kind of get ahead too much, but, we did kind of decide, pretty early on in the marriage that, we're not getting any younger. We've had a little time to get to know each other already, just living next to each other and everything. So if we're going to have a child, we probably should start this process at least relatively quick.
So you decided, early in the marriage, we're going to get this going. We got to...
Pretty much we got married and just tossed out birth control.
Okay.
So, 4, 5, 6 months went by and I would talk to the doctor. I'm like, it's not happening yet. She's like, well, don't rush it. It's only been, I think at that time she's like, it's only been 8 months. And, I kind of dealt with that for a while. And then finally I just said, fertility issues aside, there's something wrong with me and I want it checked out. So I went in. She was just like a nurse practitioner, I think. And she did an exam. She said it was like an ultrasound. So she said you have, your fallopian tubes are really swollen. Kind of look like on the ultrasound anyway. So she referred me up to one of their fertility specialists, basically. When she gave me an exam, she basically could tell, she's like, I think you have endometriosis, but we can't really technically diagnose it without laparoscopic surgery, which is just where they poke a couple holes in you and scope around and, they can actually remove some of it, that way.
Mm-hmm.
So she's like, she scheduled a surgery like a month later. My husband went and she took me in and about 15, 20 minutes later, she came out of surgery to my husband at the time and said, we had to back out. I need more surgery time and I need a second surgeon, like a general surgeon. She goes, I don't know how she's even functioning. She's got it so bad in there. My intestines were basically stuck to my uterus. All kinds of things were messed up. And it's just, it's stuck that way because of scar tissue. So endometriosis, for anybody that doesn't know, is basically like the endometrial lining of your uterus. Like cells deposit outside the uterus and they attach to other things. And so obviously women have their period every month. So kind of like all these deposits outside of your uterus are kind of in a sense almost having their own little period and they bleed and it's crazy. And people can have it. These cells can deposit all over your body, like in your brain and everything. It's even somehow, I think I read where it's actually been seen in men. I don't know how that happens, but anyway, so basically my entire abdominal cavity almost was affected in some way. My appendix was encased in scar tissue and to the point where it was actually like pushed like up and stretched. And she's like, that one of your tubes is going to have to come out. There's a large endometrioma on your ovary, so we might have to get rid of that ovary. The appendix has to come out. The intestines have to be separated from your uterus, which is why they needed, she can do surgery on the female parts. She needed a general surgeon to help her with, the intestines, the appendix, all that stuff.
And so with all this going on inside your body, I mean, you were feeling no discomfort. There was nothing, no pain. I mean, it sounds like that would be painful.
I don't want to say no pain. Just that time of the month was extremely painful. But since I had been having problems since I was probably late teen, early 20s, I just thought it was normal.
So this may have been going on for a long, long time and you just never...
Yeah. It was bad enough that it had to have been going on for many, many years. And they, endometriosis, they stage like cancer. So like 1, 2, 3, and 4. 4 being the worst. I had stage 4. But the crazy thing about endometriosis is that you can be stage 1 and have extreme amounts of pain, debilitating pain. Or you can be stage 4 and not really hardly have any. So mine was just basically focused on 1 week a month. Not that I didn't have issues, several days a month, more than I should have. But, I thought that level of pain was normal. So for me, I guess it was just...
You had it so long that you just figured this is what it is.
Yeah. I thought that was normal. So they had to schedule another surgery a month later. She said, you're going to have laparotomy, which is where they cut you, kind of like a cesarean section. So they basically have more room to work. So it was a ton of stuff they did inside. So it was very painful. I couldn't even stand up straight for probably 10 days. I slept in a recliner for probably 3 to 4 weeks. I was off. She wanted me off work. I want to say like 8 weeks, but I went back and forth because I sit for a living. So the next step, she said, I don't want you getting pregnant right away. So we're going to put you on this drug called Lupron, which I knew what Lupron was. It basically shuts your body down and puts you in a temporary menopause. I had heard horror stories about it. So I said, well, I'll do Lupron for 3 months. She wanted to do 6 months. I said, I'll do it for 3 months. And then if you want me to go on birth control for a few months, I'll do that. But I'm not doing Lupron for 6 months.
Well, Jesus, just the healing time alone.
Right.
There's no way you'd even want to think about trying to get pregnant at that point.
Right. Getting pregnant and getting bigger and having all that stuff stretched out. No. So I went on the Lupron. And some hormone therapy so I wouldn't go crazy or anything. But then did the birth control for a few months. And then, they've got that fertility drug called Clomid, which a lot of people use. Clomid can cause endometriosis to just like rage in your body. So she didn't want to put me on that. So she put me on Femara, which is actually a cancer drug, but it's been shown to help fertility. So I was on that. Every month that I was on that, I had to go in for an ultrasound. So we're looking at maybe like 7, 8, 9 months after the first 2 surgeries. So 2013. Then to 2013, beginning of 2014. So then I had to go in for monthly ultrasounds. First one was fine. Second one was fine. Wasn't pregnant yet, but the third one, they noticed something with the other fallopian tube. Now, they had already removed the right one. They had removed half of that ovary that was damaged by the big endometrioma.
Okay.
That was stuck to it. So I basically had 1.5 ovaries left, my uterus, and 1 tube. So you need the tubes to naturally get pregnant because that's where the sperm fertilizes the egg. So they saw swelling in the second tube, and I'm like, my heart dropped, but at the same time, I'm like, there's still IVF. If they have to take that tube, there's still IVF.
Yeah, so you're like, I still have a way to get there.
Right. So I said, can you take that tube out with laparoscopic surgery and not a laparotomy again? And she said, yeah, I should be able to. So she goes in. About a month later again, she goes in to take that tube out and just notices tons of adhesions. Well, adhesions, after they removed all that scar tissue, obviously there had to be fresh tissue that, regrows.
Right.
But it can also attach to other things too. So it's kind of like going through the same thing over again. She's like, this tube is going to have to come out. She backed out again. She said, this tube is going to have to come out. There's adhesions everywhere now, which is kind of a healing process, but at the same aspect, it's like, I'm just going through this all over again.
It's like, this is the second time. What the hell?
Right. So I had to have the general surgeon there again. So she scheduled it. By the time I woke up, she had already had a new surgery scheduled for the following week. So, what went into just having a few days off of work, I was like, okay, well, I guess I'm not going back for a month. They had to take that tube. My left ovary, I guess, was encased in scar tissue and adhesion stuff. She just really had to work on that one. She really did a good job at working to save that ovary. But that surgery, went fine. I kind of knew what to expect. It wasn't quite as painful as the one before. I feel like I developed a hematoma, which is like a blood-filled pocket in my abdomen. So every time I coughed or sneezed or laughed, I felt like, Edward Scissorhands was just cutting me up inside. But eventually it kind of just reduced, I guess you could say. So the problem is, right before I found out I had to have that third surgery, before I had to have the second tube removed, is when things were starting to go downhill enough in my marriage that I was like, I don't know how much longer I can do this.
Right.
He was a name caller, and he did a lot of, just general marital disputes. Was always, get the F out, I'm going to throw your stuff out of the house, and things like that. It was in front of his kids sometimes. I don't want to fight in front of a kid,
Well, not every disagreement should end with you being told, get the hell out of the house. Right. And throw your stuff out.
And this was simple stuff. Like, if one night I had a medical issue with one of the dogs, and his son liked to have this particular dog sleep in his room. And I said, you know what? She's changing from a really dangerous medicine to another dangerous medicine. I'm going to have her sleep in my room tonight so that I can monitor her. Because she was in her last 2 years of life, basically. She was old. So
she was pretty sickly then, right, at that point.
Right. So, he said okay to me, but then he threw a big fit to his dad. And just that issue, get the F out. I'm going to throw your stuff out of here. Why can't you just be nice to him for the weekend that he's here? Like, I am nice to him. I just told him he couldn't have the dog in his room. It's just like, so, I'm the step parent.
Right.
I'm assuming that it's okay to tell your child no every now and then. Not that I hardly ever had to, but just things like that was just verbally abusive stuff. And for somebody like me who's that independent, it's not really about not wanting to have to go through the fight. It was just like that kind of talk to me, I'm just going to lose all feeling for you. There's certain stuff that you just can't take back.
Oh, yeah.
When you're getting called stupid or nuts, whatever, when you're not, you just kind of lose it for somebody.
I think calling us nuts sometimes can be a little debatable. I think we're all a little crazy in our own way, right?
Everybody is. But
that's not the way to have a dispute with somebody, especially if you love that person, right?
Somebody's not crazy because they told a kid no.
Right.
A kid needs to hear no.
I mean, sometimes. You don't throw a fit, yell, and scream and threaten everything just because something isn't going the way you think it should.
And I'm not going to say that the way I grew up was the most healthy. Everybody has some dysfunction in their family, but the dysfunction in our family, wasn't maybe it was maybe a little passive aggressiveness, but it wasn't name calling and threatening and just making somebody feel totally insecure in their own home. we had kind of arranged that we would buy a house based on his income, and I would just kind of save all the money, and I kind of paid my truck payment and things like that. So that was his leverage every time we got into an argument, was get out of my house. Well, this was our arrangement. You pay the bills, I put the money in the bank.
You're both contributing. It's just in a different way.
Right. That was our arrangement, but that was, excuse me, that was his leverage to get to me.
So in between, with all the surgery you had already had,
right,
knowing you got this next one coming up, which is somewhat devastating, right?
Yeah.
Because you're thinking, you want to be able to get pregnant and have a baby, and now you got more stuff coming out that is kind of required to be able to have a baby, right?
Right.
And then now your relationship and your marriage is just going down the drain quick, all at one time.
Yes.
And how did you not lose your mind?
I don't know.
You know what I mean?
I honestly don't know. It was so stressful. In January, that dog, German Shepherd, she passed away. I had to put her down. I remember, she was getting old, so she peed in the house sometimes. I got her, cremated, and I had this urn on the table, and one morning he just got up and he looked at it the day after I picked the urn up from the place. He just looked at it and he goes, "I'm waiting for piss to come out of it." He was just very insensitive about some stuff. The dog caused some issues.
Sounds like he was a little bit vindictive.
Right. Yes. So, and he projected things like issues that he had. He would say that you were like that. He was a very unsocial guy, a very Eeyore kind of guy, so he was always projecting his negative qualities onto you, saying that you were the issue. So anyway, I knew, basically I told him, I was like, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. We weren't even 2 years into our marriage. And I'm like, you know what? We don't have a lot other than the money we put out for the wedding. We don't have a lot at stake here. I'm done.
Sounds like you kind of almost turned into a totally different person from what you knew beforehand.
Jekyll and Hyde. And there wasn't really any red flags. It was just, he liked to text argue. So I could be in the other room and he would, just send.
I hate that.
Right. So he would just send, and I'm not saying that we're all not guilty in some ways of that, but every single fight, if we fought at the house right before I had to leave for work, because I work third shift, until tomorrow anyway.
Yeah. Congratulations.
Yeah, thanks. So he would continue the fight while I was on my way to work over text messaging. And while I was at work, and I'm like, I'm done. I can't.
I'm at work, dude.
Right.
We can talk tomorrow.
Right. So that was really my only red flag, because he did that before we were married, but he didn't, for the most part, he was really nice until, probably, I think we had one argument in the first year of our marriage, and then it just tanked, and I don't know why.
Do you think the stress of everything that you were going through with the issues you're having and the surgeries and wanting to have the baby and all, do you think maybe that pushed him over the edge or something, maybe, or that was just too much for him?
It's a possibility. The thought of, excuse me, the thought of potentially having to put out that kind of money to have a child, obviously it wasn't as important to him. He would, anytime to get at me, he would say, well, you just want to marry me to have a kid.
It sounds like he had a lot of resentment. Right. And that's why I was asking that question.
It wasn't a partnership.
Yeah.
I don't know whose side he was on, but it wasn't mine. And it soon, got to the point in that last few months where I wasn't on his side either. Just.
It's like, I'm done.
Right. I'm done. I was totally emotionally checked out. So,
because at that point, it's not even a relationship anymore. It's just you're fighting with the person in the same house you're living in.
Right. So, one night he came home drunk. This was after I had already told him I wanted a divorce. He came home drunk. Followed me around the house, wouldn't leave me alone. Ended up breaking the bedroom door. It was like one of those pocket doors.
Yeah.
So I couldn't get out the door. Luckily, we had an entryway into the bathroom, and I could get out that way. But I was like, I can't do this. So the next morning, he sobered up after puking in the toilet. Sobered up, and that was really uncharacteristic of him too. But sobered up, apologized. He said, "I'll go ahead and leave the house because I told him I was going to probably just move out. I didn't know where I was going to go yet. I had another dog still. It was a large breed or a giant breed dog. I was like, I have no idea where I'm going to go, but I'm not staying here. So he said, well, I'll leave until you get out. So obviously with working, there's a lot of overtime where I work. With having all that overtime and a surgery that was supposed to be like in a week or two, I had to postpone that so I could physically move out of the house. But it took me a week to move out, and I was busting my butt to get out, but I ended up going and living with a younger married couple that were friends of mine, living in their dark basement. But hey, it was better than where I was at.
Right.
So that whole week that I was moving out, every single day I would get a text, "Are you out of my house yet? When are you going to be out of my house?" So it's just very stressful. I moved in with my friends. They fought a lot, so I didn't really want to stay there long, but I knew I had to go through that third surgery. But like I said, she backed out of that one. Had to go in, take the other tube, fix up that other ovary. So she did her best to preserve whatever fertility I had at every step of this whole surgery process. And then, so I lived with that married couple. The divorce went pretty smooth. I think I got the divorce papers to sign in the mail the day we would have hit our 2-year anniversary. So we were barely married over 2 years, and that was only technically because we were in the divorce process. But, so I have not seen or talked to him since. The third surgery and the fourth surgery was both while I was living in my friend's basement. And then about 6 months of being there, I had to get out. They were fighting a lot. They were young. I bought a house where I'm currently at since 2014. And I was like, I told my mom, I think I was crying on the phone to her. I said, now I have nothing. I have this house, but I'm not married. I can't have kids. Unless I go through IVF, but that's a lot of money. And she's like, well, I'll help you. So I was like, well, yeah, I'll do this by myself then. I'll figure it out. So I went. There's Sheriff Fertility Institute in Peoria. Our health insurance at work covered $10,000 to $12,000 of fertility, which is basically the egg retrieval and the deposit back into your body of a fertilized egg. The drugs and everything else was all going to be out of pocket. They noticed that I had some autoimmune issues, which basically like my natural killer cell level was like skyrocketed. So that basically means your body will attack things as if they're foreign objects. So if I got pregnant, which I probably had once or twice, it just basically automatically kills a fetus because it views it as a foreign object. So that was going to be another several $1,000s to have intralipid transfusions 3 times. And then obviously I would have to have a sperm donor. So that would be, $5,000 or whatever that cost approximately is. And then so after going through all this poking and prodding, checking levels and everything else, hormone levels and whatnot, had to have a couple more little easy procedures there, biopsies and whatnot. The doctor basically called me into her office and she said, look, I don't want to waste your money and I'm not going to lie to you. Your egg level is nowhere near where it should be for your age. You have a stressful job. You work 3rd shift. Basically, all that stress, all that crazy hours, is pretty much, depleted you. Like you're basically like perimenopausal. So, and what eggs you do have left are not going to be good quality. So you would have to have, there is a possibility for you to still do this, but you would have to have an egg donor as well. So when you throw in the cost of an egg donor, which is a considerable amount of money, if I was to have IVF on my own, we're looking at probably $40,000 to $50,000.
Wow.
To do that, and it's not a guaranteed thing. So
how do they know? I mean, how do they know that that you don't have enough eggs, or that the eggs you do have aren't good or aren't healthy enough or whatever, good quality enough to use? I mean, how do they know that?
Well, obviously, the older you get, your egg quality diminishes.
Okay.
Your egg count and your egg quality diminishes. So I don't know exactly how they determine these numbers, but I know at age 37 or whatever I was at the time, I think 38, they wanted me to be at a level of 0.1 or 0.2 as far as the amount of eggs I think I still had left in my body. I think that's what they consider it.
Okay.
I was at a 0.01, which means I really literally had hardly any left compared to the millions that you're born with.
Gotcha.
You're born with every one that you're ever going to have. And every year it just, they...
depletes, goes down,
right,
goes down.
Or your body releases the egg to try to get pregnant or whatever. But anyway, millions probably die just over time. But, so basically, with me being perimenopausal, they check all your hormone levels and everything. Somehow they figured out that this just isn't for you. So my regular doctor, my regular gynecologist wanted me to have a second opinion, but I was like, you know what? I've had this feeling for 3 or 4 years now. I just have this feeling, and I feel like, even though I didn't want to accept it, I was like, I'm just going to have to. I don't feel like this doctor's wrong. And even if she is somewhat wrong, it's not like I can really afford to have all this stuff done, really. What do I want to do? Owe my mom $40,000, $50,000 the rest of my life? No, I don't. So it probably took me a good year. I don't want to say I've ever completely recovered grief-wise from losing my fertility, but over time it's gotten better.
I was going to ask you that. So when the doctor pulled you in and sat you down and told you this thing, I mean, that had to be just devastating. Yeah. I mean, that just, I'm sure hearing that even is just like,
yeah,
what's left now?
Right. I cried in her office. I went out to my car and I called my friend and I cried to him. And I went home later. My brother was living with me at the time because he was going through divorce. So his kids were there. So they were all there that night. So I kind of told them what happened. And so I wasn't like alone. But my brother, he's a great brother, but he's not a man of words. So, when you lose your fertility and, he was there, he listened. That's what I needed. But I still felt so isolated. None of my friends had really gone through this. I mean, I had one friend go through fertility issues, but she ended up having twins in the process. So I had somebody that understood, but not fully. I
was going to say, I don't know, a guy could ever relate to how that feels to begin with anyway.
Right.
Because it's different for men, right? I mean,
oh yeah,
completely different process for us when we were having children, right? Or even trying to have children. It's a totally different process. We don't have that. It's not a whole body feeling, I guess, is kind of what I'm getting at with a woman. I mean,
right.
You're carrying the baby. All these things are happening. And so I don't know if anybody could understand unless they went through exactly what you went through, right? I mean,
Right.
how could
and
they?
people didn't. Your friends they want to do the right things. They want to say the right things. But, when you're married and you're trying to get pregnant, you're already trying to do absolutely everything you can think of to try to get pregnant.
Right.
But then you got your friends, they're trying to be good. They have good intentions, but we'll try this, try this. Well, don't you think we've already tried this? We've tried everything.
Yeah, we've yeah,
Right.
and I think it's to that point with your friends. I think everybody's always trying to be, like you said, good intentions, give you the best advice they can. I think everybody's trying to find that one magic thing to say that's going to make it all better sometimes, right? But
right.
yeah, it's not lost. It's like we know what we're trying to get done here.
Right.
We've consulted people. I mean,
Right. And then some of them were like, well, aren't you done dealing with this yet? Why don't you just try to adopt? Or, private adoption in America is insanely ridiculous cost-wise. I would be paying the same thing. To adopt a kid from Guatemala, you're looking at $37,000. And then you have to be available to just fly out of the country at the drop of a hat to go bond with the kid for a little bit, fly back, and then when the kid's available for adoption and you've gone through the entire process, come get them right now, today. If you don't come today, then you're going to have to pay more money. It's crazy when you really start, I know somebody that kind of went through that. But it's, it's a whole different process. And I'm like, I have to look at what is affordable for me, what financially I'm capable of, and I can't overlook that and dream too much because I just have to, I'm a very realistic person. I wanted to do it. I was going to do whatever it took to pay my mom back, but ultimately I was just like, this is just not in the cards for me. So I did know some other people that did foster care and adopted through foster care. So I started consulting with them. And like my counselor that I saw when I was married, he didn't want me to go through the fertility process either, because obviously he talks to couples all the time. He knows how hard it is and what they have to go through. So he's like, you're a natural rescuer. Why don't you just adopt? And I'm like, because, the cost and just everything you have to go through. And, some of the countries, if you go out of the country, some of them don't even accept a single mom as a potential parent.
Well, that was what I was going to ask you. Even when you look at adoption, is it harder for somebody being a single mom and being a single person? Would it be more difficult, even just to adopt in the United States? Would it be more difficult for you to be able to do that?
I'm sure. I know that if I was a child looking to place my child, ideally I would want a mother and a father. I know how important a father is in a girl's life, with their self-esteem, with everything. I know how important a father is in a boy's life, just molding him into what a man should be and how he should treat people. So I wouldn't want that for my child. And I just kind of thought my chances of finding somebody who says, I want a single mom as the mother of my child, or somebody that would flip through a book and say, okay, she's a single mom, let me check her profile out. I'm like, that's probably not too realistic, either. It's like for the people that want to place their own child,
right?
Pick the parents,
right?
So I thought, well, there's plenty of kids out there that don't have the right kind of parents, that aren't going to have a good life unless they're in foster care. So I met with my friend over lunch and I said, tell me what it's like, what the process is. He suggested I go through DCFS. He said it's harder with DCFS. It's frustrating, just because it's such a slow process, with everything. Any foster care agency is a slow process, because you don't know if they're going to terminate the parental rights, if the parents are going to surrender children. DCFS doesn't get very many infants very often. It's a lot of teenagers. And teenagers at the time were not in my radar either. The first child I actually took was 8 months old. And I had him till he was 10 months old, and there was some, issues with the ethnicity of him as far as where he could be placed. Indian laws, Native American laws. So they have to consult with the tribe. The tribe they don't want him in foster care. So he had to be removed from my house, and now he's been adopted by his foster parent, I think, that eventually took him. And
because they were Native American, then they had to take him back to the tribe, then? Is that?
No, well, there's a ton of options. The tribe basically said, we don't want him in foster care. He either needs to go to somebody that the mom knows, or we will take him. And we will take the mom, too. And once the tribe takes them, they've got their own government.
Right. It's sovereign land.
They're basically out of the DCFS system. If mom and the child go there, everything's basically like not really wiped out, but they're in their own, their own little government. It's all up to them.
So let me just take you back just for a second. So from when you got that news that you couldn't have children,
right,
or couldn't do the IVF,
yes,
right, to where you started the process of learning about the foster parenting and stuff. How long was that?
It was basically from finding out that I couldn't have kids, about 6 months later is when I really was like, I want to do this, I think. So, then I met somebody, dated him for a year, but I talked to him about what I wanted to do, and he's like, well, why don't you just wait till, we get married and, all this stuff. So I postponed it again, because I kind of was just like, well, what does it matter? I can do this foster care now, and if we get married, then boom, we're in it. We're good, But I understand his desire to start that process together. So I agreed to wait. And then that relationship only lasted, just under a year. So within a month, I was like, you know what? I'm not waiting on anybody else anymore. I'm not putting my life aside anymore for, anybody else.
Right.
I'm going to do this and focus on this. And it's all. So after I found out, and the time I actually started foster care was probably about a year and a half.
Oh, that's
the time I actually put in the application to begin the process. And then it took another probably 7 months to get certified because they're slow. And then, so I think I was officially certified or licensed, you would call it, in July of 2017. And I took my first place, because they tell you don't take a child that is not going to be a good fit in your family. So I waited till September and took an 8-month-old. I had him for 2 months, and I kind of told you that story, but infants don't come around very often, so I was getting call after call after call on teenagers. And then I got one call on a teenager, and the lady said, so-and-so at DCFS thought I should check with you on this one. So I kind of learned about her story a little bit. I was able to learn about her story a little bit before I could say yes or no, because she wasn't in need for an immediate, placement in my house. So I called them back the next morning and I said, I'll take her. I want her. So she came to live with me just a few days later. Had another surgery actually on a Monday, and I went and picked her up on a Tuesday. So it was an unrelated surgery, but so she's been with me for 2 years. Having not the ability to raise that child the first 16 and 3/4 years of her life, you know, it's different, but that's what makes it unique.
So I feel like it's been like a little bit of a learning process for both of you.
Oh yeah. You know, but I think she craves the structure. She seems to like really settle well into it. She calls me mom. She still has contact with her mom and her family and everything else, but you know, it's just like she has two moms, and she wants to stay. It's safe, it's secure, it's a roof over her head, and now that, especially now that we have the baby, you know, she was looking forward to that, but him and her are just awesome together.
I was seeing, I obviously we're friends on Facebook and I follow you, but you had put a post on there a couple days ago, I think, or 3 days ago, something about a lot of the first, maybe it was last week you did about the first,
yeah.
you know, first camping, first hike, first.
She never was really, I don't want to say she was totally sheltered, but you know, everybody's socioeconomic, you know, class is different. You know, she didn't have the abilities to go, you know, she had a special needs brother, so they didn't really have the abilities to go on vacations, whether it was for money or for the fact that it was hard to take him places. But you know, no vacations, no like simple things that other kids have gotten to experience, a horseback ride, a kayak trip or whatever. Just so there's been a lot of that, and it's just kind of become a bucket list for me to have her experience things that she never has, or you know, maybe never will again, you know. And I know people, you know, I know somebody that has, let's say, a hovercraft. So it's like I'm able to get her to do some of the things that some people may never do in their life, or, you know, don't get too many opportunities to do.
Yeah, you kind of know people, don't you?
Right.
All the years you've spent as a 911 dispatcher, right. You tend to meet people and know people.
Yeah, and they're great about it.
Yeah.
About helping out with stuff like that, so that she can experience that stuff.
Well, you've done a lot. I mean, just following it, you've done so much with her. You've shown her what a normal life would be like, right?
Right.
And everybody's definition of normal is a little different. What I mean by that is, you know, the stability, the feeling of being safe, the roof over her head, the experiences that she gets to have now. I mean, those are things that, like you said, she never had, right. Never could have. So I think that, you know, you've almost pulled like the blinders off, and she's realized there's a great big world out there, and it's not always bad, you know. And so I think you've done a great job with her. You can tell she adores the hell out of you. Yeah. You know, yeah. She even actually kind of looks like you a little bit.
I've gotten lucky because the placement I had before her, everybody's like, he looks like you, she looks like you. Except for our height, she's not real tall. She's very small. Yeah. Very tiny.
Because you're what, 5'10"?
5'10".
Yeah, and she's
over a foot shorter than me. So
Jesus.
Minus the body statures, she's got the long brown hair and stuff like that. So,
I mean, if you didn't know, you know, right. that she's your foster daughter, people would think she's your kid. Yeah. Because she really does favor you.
And I think only one person has ever said, one guy said to her at the dog training club, said, "Why is your mom so tall and you're so short?" Yeah, he's a very blunt guy.
So he's not real good with
it in black and white. And she goes, "Well, she's actually my foster mom." You know, because it's not like we go around blaring it around to people.
Yeah, there's not like a big sign that you wear.
Sure, if you go to the doctor's office and you have to show them paperwork, you're going to have to say foster child every now and then. But, you know, and she can accept that well, you know, but it's not like we go around blurting out that she's my foster kid, she's not my real kid. You know, we don't do that.
That's not like how you introduce her. This is my daughter.
When she came to live with me, I said, you know what, depending on what the circumstances is, if you want to call me my foster mom, if you just want to call me Nikki, if you want to call me mom, I don't care. You know, if it's just easier to not explain it to people, you know, just say, that's my mom. whatever's comfortable for you, but I'm not going to force you to call me anything.
Right.
So,
yeah. And at her age, it's all, it's better just you make the decision. I'll roll with whatever.
But there was times where she called me mom where it just wasn't quite the fit yet. I don't think it was comfortable to come out of her mouth, but she wanted to say it. But now it's just comfortable for her to say it, and it's comfortable to hear it. It just flows now.
And you guys have built that relationship.
Right.
Now you've built that parent-child relationship. It's not, because you really stepped in to be the parent. You didn't do it as just, well, I just got to take care of this kid for a little while until, whatever happens. I mean, you really took the role as the mom. And
there's times where I feel like maybe I shouldn't have been the one to take her because I think she needs a father figure. I am a very independent person. I can do a lot of things that a guy does. I can, but I can't give her what a dad gives her. I can't do that. I can't replace that.
No.
There's no replacement for that.
But I bet if somebody asked her, she would say she is just fine where she's at.
Yeah, she will.
I don't think she misses that.
Right.
Because I think you're doing both roles already, right? I mean,
she's never known that.
Right.
So she doesn't miss it. And I think, even if she got super, super mad at me, I don't think she would pick at this point in time to go anywhere else right now.
Well, I think what you're showing her, more importantly than anything, and I understand what you're saying about the whole father figure role and stuff, but you are showing her that she can be successful and capable and be successful individually. She doesn't need a man around for her to be able to have that and get that satisfaction that she can get by doing it by herself, And I think that's an important lesson to teach people.
It is.
Especially young girls.
You want to teach them that they don't have to have that. I mean, everybody needs that, though. I'm not I'm definitely not trying to teach her that you don't need someone in your life.
Right. In
an emotional way. But, you don't have to focus on that. That doesn't have to be the end all be all.
And I think a lot of, and that's that was kind of the point I was getting to. And like you said, you just don't focus on that. Yes. Most people want a partner. I mean, they do. But don't make that your sole goal in life is to have that partner. There's so much more to do than just that, right?
I almost went on a date here recently. And I told her, I said, would you want to watch the baby just so I could go for an hour or two? And I felt like I had to tell her why.
Yeah.
Because she's going to ask anyway. She's a teenager.
Oh, yeah.
So I just felt like I had to tell her that I was going to have a date. And she I don't even think she would know how to react, but her response was, "Ooh, get you some, Mom." And I'm like, oh my. Yeah.
Not quite the reaction you were looking for.
No, but it was just, that's not, it wasn't meant in a bad way.
That's pretty funny.
But it was just like, it was not what I was expecting. But, it's cool though, because she's the kind of kid who there's not, like, even if I did bring a relationship in, there's not going to be this teenage, stepdad conflict. She's just going to welcome them like they belong.
Yeah. I mean, she wants you to be happy, right?
Right.
And she sees that.
Right. She is that kind of kid.
Well, that's good though. I mean, because a lot of teenagers won't react that way.
Yeah, because they're going to view it as a replacement.
Yeah, they don't want to share, right? I mean, they're like, you're not welcome here. We don't want you here. And they're going to fight you.
Yeah.
So that's good that she's open to that. Right. I still think that's pretty funny.
It is. But it was not what I was expecting. But I was like, I don't even know how to tell my kid that I might have a date. Like, I almost felt embarrassed.
You almost felt like a teenager talking to your parent.
I was like, I don't know if I want to tell her this, or if I just want to come up with some lie as to why I need to leave the house. But
yeah, honesty is always the best policy.
Yeah, I know. I'm not a good liar. So, but yeah.
So did you go?
No.
All that, you didn't even go?
No, I didn't.
Chicken.
He can't spell. I can't. Yeah. Like, it wasn't, like, we were talking quite a bit. And I was just like, that's not my only reason, but I was just like, he's not for me. Plus, he can't spell.
Memo, if you can't spell well, you're out.
Formulate a sentence via text or spell. I can't do it.
Well, just think how he communicates in person.
Right. A lot of look how much communication is text messaging and stuff now. Whether it's
stupid,
a quick message or whatever, I'm just like, and it's not like I'm worried about his education level. It's just like some people have things that they just can't tolerate about somebody else. And if you can't form a sentence and you can't spell, I just can't do it. I can't do it. I'm like, nah, he's not for me.
Nah, I'm out.
He's not for me.
Yeah, that's funny. Well,
and it might be more just like, I was just not that into him anyway. So I was like,
yeah. Well, hopefully he doesn't listen to the podcast.
No, I doubt it.
No, they don't see that.
My Facebook page is locked down. I try to be somewhat private on stuff like that. So
yeah.
But yeah, no.
That's pretty funny.
I doubt it.
So you've had her 2 years. So how long did you have her before you got the baby?
Almost 2 years. She came to me in June. So we just hit our 2-year mark, and I got the baby this past January. So she was there 18 months. You've got him, and man, he's a cute little kid. He is.
Man, he's adorable.
Huge little blue eye, or big blue eyes,
yeah.
I should say. Just huge blue eyes. Everybody loves his eyes, and he's such a happy baby. He really doesn't ever cry unless he really needs something. Daycare loves him. Everybody that watches him loves him. Everybody's like, I look so forward to your posts on Facebook because he just makes my day.
He is cute.
And he's funny. Not on purpose because he's a baby, but there's just things that he does that is funny. Like I took a video the other day and I was just trying to get him to shake his head no by, doing it in the background of the video so he could kind of imitate it. But turn the video on and he's babbling something. And then I said, are the Cubs going to win the World Series? And he just kind of starts shaking his head no. And he's like, nah.
Nah.
And, you got to see the video, obviously. But when I replayed it back, I was like, it sounds like he's saying, hell no, nah. I was like, oh my God, I swear to God, I did not teach him this. This is just babble. But
yeah, I really did not teach him to say that.
And those two together, she's such a good big sister. And he adores her. So.
Well, that day that I stopped by and dropped that dog bed off, and, you could tell, he was all about her, Right. He had no problems. I even got to hold him, and he tolerated that for a few seconds. Because babies.
He's just started. That was the first sign, actually, of, separation anxiety with him was when you were holding him.
Yeah.
But now he's got it quite a bit more.
Well, and you're normal to him now.
Right.
Again, it's been 6 months. So, and you said he's 8 months old. So for the first 2 months, right, he probably didn't have the normalcy he needed. And now this last 6 months, again, it's that normalcy and stability. And that's what he's going to be focused on is that and you and his big sis, Yeah.
You can definitely tell they adore each other. I think in the beginning when he was crying a lot and we were trying to figure out his routine and everything else, she was like, I don't know if this having a baby here is what I really am into now. But
can you send him back?
Once we got a routine figured out and, and it all started working better, flowing better, I can't imagine that she would imagine anything different now. And I don't think I could either. So, the outcome, we don't know, but he's always welcome to a permanent place in my house, but obviously we don't ever know what's going to come with any case. But yeah, they're awesome together.
Now, have you been asked to take any more kids?
It's funny because I tell them I have a vacancy for 2 kids because I'm not going to take what I'm not reasonably capable of doing.
Right.
I'm not going to have 7 kids in my house, but...
That would be maddening.
Right. So, according to them, I only have a vacancy of 2, which is filled by the 2 that I have, but every now and then I still get calls. And I said, why do they call me? I'm full. And they said, well, because you've basically shown that you'll take 1 teenager, so they're going to keep calling you. I'm like, yeah, well, I'm good with the 2 that I have.
And that's a lot. You're a single mom. I mean, you work full time and you work a ton of overtime.
Right. Like this week, I have to go in at 3 a.m. on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, and he's supposed to go to daycare. So, I have to call upon my support system of people to say, hey, will you come pick up Heather and the baby? So, with this whole COVID thing, they can only have one person do drop-off. So I'll have to have a couple people come, grab Heather, and Heather she's the most available person, really.
Right.
So I'll have to have somebody grab her and run her down to drop them off at daycare, and then I'll get off work and pick them up. But, it's hard because we're always short-staffed. Excuse me. It's never really ever fixed. So it's something you either got to figure out how you're going to do or go find another job.
So now what days off are you with your new schedule then? Are you going to be weekends off or?
It's Sunday, Monday.
Sunday, Monday. Oh, they made bad. I had those when I was a prison guard. I like Sunday, Mondays off.
Not bad at all.
Still got a weekend night, but then you got a day during the week you can go get stuff done that you need to get done.
Exactly.
That's
honestly what I'm excited about the most, because on third shift I had Friday, Saturday off, but when you worked all night, you want to sleep a little bit on Friday, and then it's like you get up a few hours later and you're like, I just don't really feel like going anywhere.
Well, you're exhausted.
Right. So.
And as much overtime as you get forced in on, I mean, third shift's a hard shift to work anyway.
Right.
Then throw in all the extra on top of it.
So it's like, yay, I'm excited that I get to do day shift, but I'm doing half a third shift too.
Yeah.
So really what's changed.
But hopefully your sleep pattern will get a little bit better or something. I mean, I think that will be the biggest change for you. I remember when I came off Thursday, you worked a lot longer than I did. I worked it for 7 years. And I remember when I came from thirds and I went to day shift, it took me a little while to get my sleep pattern back to where I didn't feel tired all the time.
Right.
And it was probably a good month or two. And then finally, my sleep pattern came around. My body got used to being back on day shift. And
one of my coworkers' boyfriends, I think she said, you don't get used to third shift. You just get used to feeling tired.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
And that's how I was. I was just tired all the time. And you lived with that. Right. I still got to do stuff.
Every moment of your waking day feels like you just woke up.
Yeah, you're always exhausted.
Or like you need to go back to sleep.
Yeah, so. and you can. That's the thing. You could very easily, but you can't because you got your life that you've got to do, right?
So I never got off third shift for a relationship because I'm kind of one of those people where I have to know over a period of time that this is going to work. I'm going to feel secure, and then I'll move. And I never got to that point. So just finally, I'm just like, okay, now I got 2 kids, and it's time to.
Well, your reason to move changed, right?
Right.
Instead of for somebody, it's still for somebody, but it's for you and for them.
Right. It's for the family as a whole.
Right. It's for the betterment of the family. And I remember I think we were chatting one day, and I said, you're going to feel a lot different, if you can ever get off third shift and get to days.
Right.
And I do think so. And I think you're going to find that you don't have to get used to being tired all the time anymore.
I hope not.
Yeah.
I've never been a morning person, but I hope not.
Well, 3 a.m. is pretty early.
Right.
When you go into work all next week.
Get up at 1 a.m.
Ugh. But I don't know. I'm a morning person. I get up at 5 every morning.
Yeah, not me.
Yeah.
I mean, with a baby, yeah, but on any other day, I like getting up maybe 7 o'clock. I'm good with that, but not 5 o'clock.
Yeah, I don't always want to well, it depends. I was up till 1 o'clock last night, but I woke up at 6:30, quarter till 7 this morning, but I've never been a late sleeper. I'm not one of them guys that can sleep till 9, 10 o'clock. Now, my kids, on the other hand, they could sleep all day long.
I just got a text message from Heather, so she must finally be up at 10:47 in the morning. But she didn't know I was leaving, so I texted her earlier and said I got to go redo this podcast again. So she must have just got it, so she's up.
Yeah, well, I know Chloe's up. I heard her walking around. She was up when you got there. She was.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think she's got to go to work. I don't know what time, but she's up wandering around.
Okay.
I heard her get up, and then when you came in, I seen her go from the bathroom to her bedroom. So she's not a morning person. No. She's not like me. When my eyes open, man, my day's ready. I get started. I get moving. I'm tons of energy. I want to get the day going. Not Chloe.
If you figure out how that can spread to others, spread some
to share some of it.
It doesn't matter what time of the day I wake up. I am not a morning person at all.
There are some people, it just takes them a little bit to kind of get woke up and kind of get their bearings and get their day started. I'm just not one of those people.
Yeah.
Oh, it's 10:45?
Yeah, I know you had an errand to run.
Yeah, I got to be there by 11:30. I got time. So,
Okay.
so you got all the way there. You're here now, got 2 great kids, kind of living your life in the way you've wanted to and been able to do. Are you feeling the fulfillment now? Or some fulfillment?
For the most part, yeah. I mean, there was a time I think I talked myself into thinking that I didn't want kids, but, for the most part, I always wanted a family. Now I look at it and I think, this isn't traditional, but that's what makes it cool. I can have a family and still kind of fulfill the need of rescuing people.
Mm-hmm.
Trust me, I don't feel like a hero every day, but if I'm honest with myself, I know that I've made a huge difference in 2 lives, 3 actually. Is it 100% fulfillment emotionally for a woman? No. I still really want that partner in life, but I know that at this point, with what I've chosen as my route for children and things like that, is very untraditional. So, it's going to be, one of the billions of one single little billion fish in the middle of the sea, probably 10,000 leagues below the sea, or whatever that phrase is. That might be my guy. Will I ever find him? I don't know. So I'm kind of missing that, but it's not the end all be all for me either.
Right.
So maybe I'll find that guy someday. Maybe not. If not, they're missing out, because I got 2 great kids right now. Maybe I'll have more down the road. I don't know, but, life is as good as it can be right now.
Yeah, you can't tell what the future is going to bring. Nobody can, right? You just have to enjoy what you have right in front of you. That's all you can do.
Exactly.
I learned that lesson a long time ago. You just have to get through today. Tomorrow's a new day.
Yep.
It's a fresh start. That's how I look at a lot of things, I don't worry about what I can't control, and because I don't feel like I should spend the energy on it. It's not worth it.
Yeah,
it doesn't do me any good.
Teach me that one too.
I don't. If I can't control it, I'm not going to spend a lot of time thinking about it. No, obviously within reason. There's some things that, I can't control it. I don't like the outcome. I got to deal with it. But I typically, if I don't control it, I don't really care about it.
It's funny because dispatchers are a lot of control type A people. There's so much you can't control on the phone, at work, that you feel like you want to put that control into other areas of your life. But yeah, I teach me your technique, because I wish I didn't have to feel like I could control could try to control everything. I wish I could relax a little bit more. So.
Yeah, I don't know if there's a technique there for that.
Right.
It's
just personality.
Yeah, well, that, or maybe I'm just lackadaisical, one or the other. I don't know which, but I don't think I should worry about stuff I can't control, because then if I think about it, what happens is then I feel like I fail, right? Because I can't control the outcome. I don't have any say or input to it, but I want to control it.
Right.
So then, since I can't, then I'm going to feel like I'm failing at something.
Yeah.
When the reality is I'm not failing at it. I just have 0 input and 0 control and 0, ability to change that outcome. So I don't know. I screw up enough on things I can't control. I don't need to try to screw up on something I can't. Right. So.
And it's crazy because you have that one thing that happens to you in life where, like my fertility, or, a relationship, or, that there's things in life you can't control, period.
Right.
But there's certain stuff, like that big stuff. You sit there and you spend so much time and so many days and so many nights laying in bed thinking, how could I have done this different?
Right.
That doesn't always go away on some things.
No, it doesn't. And in a lot of things, it doesn't. Hindsight is always 20/20, right? We can always look back and say, well, maybe I should have done this, or I should have done that. And it's okay, I think, to do that. I think the takeaway, though, is while you're doing that, is to remember to learn the lesson from it. Mm-hmm. And then you can be different going forward, because I can't change the past. I can only learn from it.
Right.
And I trust me, I've laid in bed many, many nights and thought, could I have done something different? Could I have, and not just with losing Nicholas, but in a lot of different things,
Oh, yeah.
And it's just, I got to learn the lesson. I can't change it. And so I just can try to make sure I don't do it again, and you don't always think of things that in a bad way with that mentality. I mean, sometimes you just think of things, and it could be a good memory or something. And you just think, well, could I have done something different, made it different, or made it even funner or whatever? I think that's human nature. I think we always want to look back and say, could I have done it differently or better? I don't know.
I sit there all the time and I think, man, maybe I just need to lose some of my independent personality. And I probably do in some ways, but because that seems to be the biggest issue for me in relationships. Like, they don't know how to handle it.
Well, I don't know about that. I mean, you're not in a position that you need to.
Right. Right now, no. Like, in relationships, though, I'm like, maybe I need to let my, I don't want to say my guard's not let down, but I'm just so used to methodically doing everything for myself.
It's hard to let that go a little bit.
Right. And I just haven't found that kind of guy that is secure enough with himself that, he can deal with some of my quirks, like I just walk into the store and I just throw a 40-pound bag of dog food over my shoulder. I don't think about the fact that I have a boyfriend standing right there that can do it for me. That's just me. But little things like that, guys want to feel like they're the savior and everything else. And
the macho blah, blah, blah.
Right.
Yeah, we're guys. We want to do all that. We want to be the macho guy.
I'm not good at that.
Well, you shouldn't have to be. I mean, in all reality, if Pam wants to go pick up a 40-pound bag of dog food, I'm going to let her. Right. Okay, go ahead. Have at it. It saves me from having to do it. My sore back or my knees hurting or whatever. I mean, have at it,
Right.
I mean, that's a lot of guys do take that personal and I don't know why, because it's really not. I mean, so what? You know what I mean? Why is that like an ego kick? Who cares?
Yeah. I don't know.
But that's how guys are taught. That's what we're raised to be like. I mean, that really is what it is. We're not raised to appreciate an independent woman. We're raised to think that's offensive to us, right?
There's certain things about the gender roles that are just never going to go away, no matter how feminist everybody is, or, there's just certain stuff that's not going to go away.
Yeah, and right, wrong, or indifferent, that's just the way it is, I think.
Exactly.
I mean, and honestly, at my age, I'm on the back half of my life, so even if it does change, it probably ain't going to happen the next 30 years, so what do I care? Right. I'm approaching 50, man. I'm 2 years away from it, so God, I am getting old.
I am glad that you asked me to do this, though, because it's not very often you find somebody that wants to hear your story, that understands your story, and especially a guy that would understand that fertility and things are actually something you can grieve about. So, thank you for even thinking about it.
Well, I think it's important.
Right.
Because I think you have a story to tell, and I think people should hear it, because I think what you went through is hard.
It is.
And women women overall are more incredible than men, because what your bodies are capable of doing, your emotional connections, and all those things that women can do very, very well that men cannot.
Right.
And so I think it was important that we need to hear what you have to say. So, I appreciate you coming on and being willing to share, because I know that was not an easy story to tell, and I know it's still not easy to live with every day.
Right. You don't ever forget, No. It's still there. It just gets better. I wouldn't trade my life right now,
No, you got a pretty good thing going, don't you?
Yeah, they're awesome. Yeah. So.
All right. Well, with that, Nikki, I think we'll go ahead and call it a day.
Alrighty.
All right. Well, appreciate you coming on.
Thank you
Oh,
so much.
my pleasure.
Alrighty.
All right. All right, guys. That ends this episode. Until next time, peace.